Today I'm going to talk about the loss of the 40-foot coal-molded yacht Space-Time. It was owned by two young Germans, and they were trying to set a speed record from Cadiz in southwestern Spain across the Atlantic to San Salvador in the Bahamas, which is one of the routes Columbus took coming across the Atlantic. The reason I want to talk about this is because it exemplifies very clearly how a maritime rescue coordination center helps to save lives and assist people in distress. Now, the IMO established the planet's oceans, broke up the planet's oceans into sections, and they call them rescue centers, and they attach these to all the countries in that particular area. The one in this part of the world, the Caribbean, and the Eastern Caribbean particularly, is MRCC Fort de France, which is a French overseas territory, and they listen to the VHF for distress calls. They also monitor traffic, fishing, pollution, and they do that 24/7, and they're very efficient and have saved lives, many lives over the years. Now, like I said, on the 2nd December 2002, we were around midnight. I got a call that there was a Mayday distress call in channel 16, and when I answered them on the VHF, the two Germans said that they weren't sure of where they were, but they were aground and had been washed over a reef, and they could barely see a rocky coastline below them. But they were not sure where they were. They figured they might be somewhere around Antigua, Barbuda, but they were not sure. They couldn't see any lights whatsoever along the entire coastline, which made me think right away it was probably Barbuda, which has the only lights you're going to see there now, or then, was of the village, which was 12-15 miles away to the west. The entire east coast, there's no light in whatsoever. Anyway, we were sitting there trying to figure out where they were. The reason they had ended up in this particular area was that halfway across the Atlantic, the GPS died on them, and they were sailing by dead reckoning, and hence they ended up here, 1,000 miles plus away from San Salvador. Anyway, I came up with the idea of, look, let's send off, activate the EPIRB, and the rescue center in Martinique should pick it up, and then they'd get back to us and tell us where they are. So I phoned them. I have their number on my phone, and I called them. I said, look, this is the situation. We're going to have them activate their EPIRB, and if you could get back to us and give us a Latin long and tell us exactly where they are. And I told them, look out for the EPIRB activation in a few minutes. I got back to the yacht, and they activated it, and within, I would say, 3 minutes, they called us right back, and they gave us their Latin long as being on the mid-east coast of Barbuda, in an area called Pigeon Cliff. A very dangerous area, no beaches or safe anchorages. There's nothing on the east coast of Barbuda but reef, the entire east coast. There's probably more reef around Barbuda than there is land on Barbuda. Anyway, they had washed over, I know the area quite well, they had washed over the barrier reef and ended up in the middle before hitting the shore, and they managed to get their anchor out, but they said it was dragging. They asked for immediate assistance, and it's one of the few times in all the years I've been involved in salvage operations that I ever heard a captain of a ship cry, and he actually shed a few tears asking us to please come and get him off. He built the ship himself, coal molded like he said, and covered with glass, and it was all he had. And by this time it was like 2 in the morning, and we activated, I tried to activate my crew as much as possible, and I took over one of the smaller boats with only one person on board, and we couldn't get into the area. I pretty much knew this before, but we followed to the area to see what we could do, and if at all we could get in through the reef to help him. And we couldn't. In the meantime, I had called an individual in the village of Codrington in Barbuda to come and drive up there. It's a long drive, and a lot of it's bad road and bush, and he finally got to the coast, and he saw the yacht that had washed over. You could see the masthead light and a few lights on the yacht. And he went back to the village, got his boat, and he came up and he met us in an area called Welch's, which is the closest place we could get into safe anchorage on the east coast. We got into his small boat, the Frog, and we found our way to the casualty. By then, it had washed up against the rocks on the cliff, as the pictures we have here will show. And it was a total loss. The mast broke over and dropped onto the land. And we went and we got just about all the belongings off of it. And the life raft, the sails, the ropes, everything. And put them on the little low-lying cliff rocky edge. And they just wanted to get out of there. They're depressed and frustrated. They wanted to go to Antigua and they wanted to leave and go back to Europe. He told me, just, you can have whatever's on the rocks. They had 2 little suitcases with their personal belongings. I in turn gave it to the guy, Vernon, from the village, and I piled them into our boat, and we took them back to Antigua, and 2 days later they flew back to Germany. They just wanted no part of what was left. And well, the story here is that I only have a few pictures of the boat on the rocks. This to exemplify how efficient MRCC can be in assisting in maritime emergencies like this. But it was a remarkable experience. And that's the end of that. There's another example of how MRCC played a part and how powerful their station is when it comes to VHF transmissions and receptions. There was another yacht, a small yacht, about 30 foot, that sailed into Cades Reef one night on the south coast of Antigua, and the only radio they had on board, these were before cell phones were available, the only radio they had on board was a handheld VHF, 5 watts, as opposed to the 25 watt base station. And they put out a distress call with their 5 watt, and I couldn't hear them, and I am in Antigua, and they're off a reef in Antigua. And MRCC 120 miles away picked it up. And I heard them talking to it, and we communicated, and then we went out and got them off the reef. That one was a fortunate retrieval without much damage. So that's all about the Space-Time and the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center in Martinique.